Hi, and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce, and so last week I mentioned that Amazon's Jeff Bezos was briefly, for hours only, the world's richest man, and I made the observation that I'd gone longer than that without a bathroom break. I also talked about White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci's vulgar description of some of his co-workers. Oh, and a correction from last week. I'd observed that I thought it was odd because Scaramucci was reporting to Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. Didn't seem like he would be able to fire him, but that was a mistake. I'd missed the fact that Scaramucci had even bragged that he didn't report to Priebus, but instead reported directly to the president. Well, too late to make it to last week's edition, except as a drop-in. Reince Priebus was fired. Of course, he wasn't told. Instead, he learned it when the White House announced a new Chief of Staff, former Homeland Security Director and retired Marine four-star General John Kelly. Now, I don't know if he can bring discipline to the White House, but if anyone can, I would think he would be able to, and it needs it. One of the first things he did, Mucci's gone 10 days after he gets there. That's even less time than Michael Flynn. I've gone longer than that between gasoline fill-ups. Hey, boys and girls, can you spell disarray? Now, I'm pretty sure he won't put up with undisciplined staff, but the question is, can he bring discipline to the Oval Office? Just over the last, couple weeks, Dump told the police officers in Suffolk County on Long Island they shouldn't protect a suspect's head when putting them into a patrol car. The Suffolk County Police Department issued a statement saying they had strict rules, and that as a department, quote, we do not and will not tolerate roughing up prisoners. Prez also talked at the annual Boy Scout Jamboree, and he bragged about beautiful people he knew and over and again about politics and his amazing win. This is the Boy Scouts. A few days later, he said that the head of the Boy Scouts called him and said, it was the best speech ever. Well, you can see where this is going, right? The Boy Scouts first. They issued a statement saying, no, we didn't. In fact, they had apologized to the Boy Scouts. The leadership had apologized to the Boy Scouts, saying that that political stuff was inappropriate. And then midweek, this past week, the White House admitted that that call, the best ever, never happened. This past Monday, he said the president of Mexico called him to praise the border policy. Mexican officials said, no, we didn't. And on Wednesday, the White House conceded, well, no, they didn't. So really the question is, can Kelly bring discipline to an undisciplined president? And if he can't, will he stay? I agree with his politics or not, I don't think he's a fool, and I don't think he suffers fools either, gladly or otherwise. One other note, the White House has said, read the ongoing investigation, they've repeatedly said there's nothing there. Well, Special Counsel Robert Mueller has impaneled a new grand jury. We'll see. All right, I spoke last week about the power outage on the Outer Banks islands of Ocracoke and Hatteras. It's still out, but the good news is it's apparently not going to last as long as originally feared. Some of the estimates were over 2 weeks. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the town of Hindman, Pennsylvania was evacuated. The whole town, small town. Freight train derailed. Several cars were carrying hazardous materials, caught fire. Hindman is southeast of Pittsburgh, and it's, a nightmare. Molten sulfur leaking, and that burns, and it's poisonous, and liquid petroleum gas is also what caught fire. I'm not sure exactly what liquid petroleum gas is. I don't think that's propane, is it? Anyway, it's a lousy situation. Of course, that was midweek, and the folks are now back. But still, you never know when your life routines are just going to go kablooey. Literally, kablooey. 2 examples, just days apart. In December 1988, I was working at my first radio job at a small radio station in Arkansas, just across the river from Memphis. I was on my way to work on December 21st, and I heard a report on the radio that a Pan Am plane was missing. Of course, that was Pan Am 103, blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland. Hundreds of lives were lost, or otherwise forever changed. Doing your normal life routines. You don't expect a plane to fall out of the sky into your house. And then 2 days later, again heading to work, it Took me forever to get there. I almost didn't get there. Why? Traffic was stopped on I-40. A propane truck hit a bridge abutment, burst into flame. The bridge caught fire. The tank itself, you've seen, the big tank, no exaggeration. It took off like a rocket. The propane is dripping fuel, and it took off like a rocket. The whole bridge is on fire. It hits another abutment. That ricochets it towards a residential neighborhood, caught trees on fire, and it landed in a house that went up in flames. A total of 9 were killed. So I've said it before, never take awakening tomorrow for granted.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. For most of my adult life, I weighed a little over 100 pounds. Not much more than in this picture taken when I was about 17 and considering becoming a jockey. But as is often true, once I crossed into my 40s, extra weight came and it stayed. For years I tried to lose, instead gained, and ended up 153 pounds. And I'm embarrassed to show you this video. Then I learned that it isn't about calories and exercise, but instead it's about what you eat. You might say, sure, ice cream makes you fat. But there were surprises, things like orange juice not being such a wise choice if you're trying to lose weight. So I just made some basic changes to what I ate, not how much, and the weight just fell off. Now, nearly 3 years later, it is still off. And don't misunderstand, I'm eating foods I like, not bamboo shoots. Friends ask me how I did it so often, I put it in a book. It's available as an ebook for all platforms, and the print edition is available at barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. Hey, you can shrink too.
Welcome back. Remember, you can watch all of our previous shows at either our Facebook page or at tinyurl.com/BruceChannel, and you can write to us at thebrucechannel@yahoo.com. All right, we lost some notable folks over the last couple of weeks. Surprising a lot of folks was the death of Sam Shepard. Apparently, he died over a week ago, July 27th, but it wasn't announced until this past week. Of course, everyone knows about his acting. He was in a lot of movies, a lot of movies. Probably best known for portraying Chuck Yeager, the man who broke the sound barrier, portrayed Yeager in the movie The Right Stuff. No surprise that he was also a director, but I was surprised to learn he was also an author and a playwright and a screenwriter. He was born on November 1943, died at the age of 73. I was not only surprised to learn how prolific he was as a writer, I was surprised to learn that he died of ALS. Just 2 years ago, he was in Dubious Battle, which I was in. There's an irony here, too. If you watch the movie The Right Stuff, you saw him portray Chuck Yeager. There's no way we could have guessed that Yeager, well over 20 years his senior, would outlive Shepard. By the way, Chuck Yeager is still going strong. He broke the sound barrier, the Bell X-1, October 14th, 1947, but he didn't get any fame for it because it was all top secret. He did have a distinguished career. He retired from the Air Force as a brigadier general. He finally did get some fame from the movie. By the way, if you saw the movie, he made a cameo. He was the bartender at Pancho's place. Anyway, that fame led to him becoming a spokesperson for A.C. Delco. He published his autobiography titled Yeager. This is pretty cool. On the 50th anniversary of the sound barrier flight in 1997, he flew an F-15D Eagle at a speed greater than Mach 1. That's right, he flew it. It was his last official flight with the Air Force. However, cool again, on October 14th in 2012, the 65th anniversary, he was a passenger in an F-15 piloted by Captain David Vincent, and together they went through the sound barrier, he probably for the last time. He's now 94, and from time to time I have posted addresses of some folks whom you might wish to give an attaboy to. I don't have to do that for Chuck Yeager. If you wish to write him, you can. Just go to chuckyeager.com. All right, if you're a longtime football fan, you might recognize the name Ara Parseghian. He died on Wednesday, and he was 94, just a few months younger than Chuck Yeager. I didn't know it, but he once played for the Cleveland Browns as a halfback and defensive back. Probably that's where he got his good coaching stuff from Paul Brown. He's best known for having won 2 national championships as the head coach of Notre Dame's Fighting Irish. First time in 1966 and then again in 1973. Finally, I meant to get to this last week. On July 26th, we lost 99-year-old June Foray. Actually, had she lived just another 7 weeks, she would have hit 100. Don't know the name? Yeah, me either. Even though she has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Among the characters she's played, if you've seen either of the two Mulan movies, she played Grandmother Fa. If you saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit, she played Wheezy and Lena Hyena. If you saw Cinderella, she voiced Lucifer the Cat. Yeah, she was primarily a voice actor. For decades, she brought us some of the most familiar voices in our lives. Loads of Looney Tune characters. You know, Granny, and she was Elmer Fudd's mother and Mr. Magoo's mother. She can be heard every year as the voice of Cindy Lou Who in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. She was the voice of Jokey Smurf on the Smurfs. Hundreds and hundreds more voices on radio and the movies and television shows and video games. And she played Betty Rubble, yeah. And she gave voices to Rocky the Squirrel and to...
But what made the lump?
This brick with a note on it.
What does it say?
The brick, it don't say nothing.
The note, darling.
Yep, oh darling. Natasha. You know, dying when you're nearly 100, nobody can say you were shortchanged. And I don't know, but I hope her latter years weren't spent enfeebled and in pain, but I think maybe not. She appeared as both Rocky and Fearless Leader's mother in 2014's Rocky and Bullwinkle. Thank you, Ms. Foray. You brought lots of smiles for a lot of years to millions and millions of people. Hey, a new sponsor.
We're millionaires, boys. I'll share it with all of you.
How about that? All right, interesting philosophical question arose this week. And I could argue either side. 96-year-old Oscar Grunegg was declared fit enough to go to prison. He'd been convicted in 2015, 4 years in prison, for his role as a guard at Auschwitz. So, he personally didn't brutalize anyone or kill anyone, but he did tell the court, and I quote, "For me, there's no question that I share moral guilt. I ask forgiveness. I share morally in the guilt, but whether I'm guilty under criminal law, you will have to decide. I would like you to believe me. I saw the gas chambers. I saw the crematoria. I saw the open fires. I would like you to believe that these atrocities happened because I was there." What's interesting, though, is survivors of the Holocaust have given voice to some diverse opinions. Some want him punished. Others say, why not community service? So you got to wonder, which would be better? Forget about it entirely? No, I don't think you can. But on the other hand, what's the point? He's 96 years old. He's not going to be rehabilitated. And he's no danger to anyone, so it is purely a form of revenge. But truly, if he spoke of his experiences and taught young people the dangers and hazards and pitfalls of xenophobia, wouldn't that actually have a chance of doing good, of making the world a slightly better place? It's certainly not going to be a bit better because he's in prison. All right, hard to believe, but football's back. As of August 1st, scholastic teams can practice, But the NFL team started the last week of July, and the Hall of Fame game was Thursday. That's barely a week over practice began. The Cowboys beat the Cardinals, but it's meaningless. True enough, the rest of the league kicks off things this upcoming Thursday. Those are going to be pretty meaningless too, but, after just 1 week, the Hall of Fame game, they barely know what the plays are. Anyway, here we go. One other sports note, the last of golf's major championships for men, the PGA, is this week, and it's near here. It's at the Quail Hollow Country Club in Charlotte. For Jordan Spieth, this is it. If he can win it, he will be the youngest all-time to collect all 4 majors. And he has exactly 1 shot to do it. If he doesn't win it this year, Jack Nicklaus will remain the youngest. So, no pressure or anything. All right, so I've had this visitor for the last several weeks. If you went to a bazaar somewhere in the Mideast, you might see the various vendors opening up their tents and putting out their wares, ready to start another day. And if you hung around until it was time to close, then you'd see the various vendors turning out the lights, closing up the tents, and quitting until it was time to start over in the morning. My visitor's a lot like that. A lot like that. Except reverse the times. Early in the morning, when it's still dark out, and I'm taking Katie outside, I notice by the light outside the door that there's this little spider who sets up shop with a nice web every morning. One morning, I decided to get a picture, and there he is. Same place every day. I took 1 shot with flash and 1 without. The thing is, once we're fully into daylight, maybe an hour past dawn, Spider-Man's gone. Or maybe it's Spider-Woman. I don't know how to do a physical on spiders, but it's consistent. It's got to be by design. Maybe he or she doesn't want to attract attention of birds. Anyway, one morning shortly after the sun was up, but before he or she folded up his tent, I caught this shot. Cute little Spidey. Oh, I don't know how to do physical on spiders, but that reminds me of something I heard a few weeks ago on Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers. Yeah, I know. Tom Magliazzi died a few Octobers back, but they're still on in the form of the best of Car Talk. And even though they are repeats, they're just as good as ever. So I was listening, and it was in response to a caller's question involved something on this year model car and that, and they weren't sure. Gee, did that year have this, or did that? They made this observation, and they said it's a lot harder to be an auto mechanic than a doctor. Why? Because, in their words, there's only 1 make and 2 models of humans. 1 make, 2 models, and once you get that, the manufacturers don't do a whole lot of redesigns every couple of years. I suppose that makes sense. Okay, last week I was running an errand. I had to make 2 stops. The 2 stores were near each other, but not really a 1-spot parking deal. It takes about a minute to drive to the second. So I'm in the car, and I don't know who's on the radio. There's somebody speaking, and it's apparently a baseball announcer. And they said he does a pretty good Harry Carey, longtime Cubs announcer, so he tells a story. Harry Carey's driving in Chicago. He's got a friend with him, and he's going like 90 miles an hour. No surprise, he's pulled over, and the friend says, "Oh man, I told you to slow down." Harry says, "No, I won't get a ticket." But the police officer doesn't recognize him, and instead asks for his license and registration. Uh-oh. Nah. Carey says, "It's all right. Well, officer, I'd give you the registration, but this is a stolen car." Cop gives him a stern look. "You want to tell me anything else?" Then he says, "Well, you should know there's a loaded gun in the glove box." The officer is not happy. He says, "All right, sir, please step out of the car. There's the passenger, you two. I'm calling for backup. Don't either of you move." And Carey says, "Okay, but we won't move. But you should know there's a dead body in the trunk." So, backup arrives. A couple of backup units arrive. The lights are flashing. The 2 men are seated in the back of different cruisers. And after a minute or two, one of the newly arrived cops comes up to Harry Carey, recognizes him, and says, "Mr. Carey, the officer said you told him this was a stolen car and that there was a gun in the glove box. But in the glove box were the usual things: including registration, which shows this car is registered to you. And Carrie gives him kind of a disgusted look. And the officer says, and he said you told him there's a body in the trunk, but all that's in there are some golf clubs. Now Carrie gives him a really angry look and tells the cop, oh, and I'll bet you the son of a bitch said I was speeding, too. Okay, I don't know if that's a true story. I sort of doubt it because I have told it to a friend and told me he'd heard it, just not as a Harry Carey. But he was right. It's a funny story. It's a good story. All right, finally, I mentioned last week that those of you with an iPad or an iPhone that has Siri, you should tell Siri, I see a little silhouette of a man. I hope you did. Her response is what's called an Easter egg, something a programmer will hide and let it be discovered as happens or not. So there are more. There's a few more. I'm going to show you the first one en toto. But before I do, you have to know Siri is the personal assistant on the Apple devices. The personal assistant that is Microsoft, the equivalent to Siri, is called Cortana. So take a look at this. Isn't that great? All right, here are some others. You can ask Siri, Siri, do you have a boyfriend? And you can ask, what cell phone is the best? Another one is, what does the fox say? Now, if you do that one, and the answer comes up and you don't get it, you have to Google Ylvis, Y-L-V-I-S. All right, you might say to her, Siri, I'm sad. A really good one is, read me a haiku. Another really good one is, Siri, do you believe in God? A positively great one is, Siri, when will the world end? Another good one is, Siri, make me a sandwich. You might ask, Siri, tell me a story. You might ask her the meaning of life. But my favorite, ask Siri this. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Yeah, oh, by the way, last week I forgot to mention that August is Anti-Frizz Month. Upcoming this week, Tuesday, is International Cat Day. Thursday, the 10th, is World Lion Day, related to Cat Day. And then 2 days later, it's World Elephant Day. An important one, not this week, but next week. Important enough to possibly plan on making a trip 2 Mondays hence, on the 21st. A total eclipse of the sun. They happen, they're not rare, but where they hit any one spot, it can be rare. This one, the path of totality, look at this. It's likely the only one I'll ever have a chance to see. Yeah, if I win the lottery, I could take a trip to Ecuador, the Marshall Islands, or some other exotic place when there's one scheduled. But this one, wow, the total eclipse is going to be only a few hours away from me. I may have to go. Anyway, that's 2 weeks away. For this one, I hope it's the best week you've ever had.